hear me? So generally, okay, as a way of recap, so I would just say that last week I looked at the general definition of social media as the use of technology in the creation of content, and the content goes beyond text to encompass videos, images, and the rest of all that. I also looked at the population of people that use social media. Should I say daily or yearly? The population of humans, at least, that use media increases, okay, such that as at 2018, about 2.4 billion people all over the world were using social media. And as at January this year, 31 million Nigerians are using social media. So if that is the case, that means that most social media users are both literate and illiterate, or should I say, no, sorry, literate and semi-literate. All you need to do to use social media is to be able to read and write and to some extent interpret text and videos, okay? So you just need basic education to be able to use social media. So I also said that considering the population of people that use social media, and considering the fact that an average human spends at least 3 hours on social media, okay, it portends great, it actually provides a very large platform for gathering of data, and also as well as the analysis of data. It will consider the fact that a lot of people use social media. That means they are doing something on social media. If they are not commenting, they are posting, they are liking, they are arguing, they are debating, they are soliciting for one thing or the other. All these make up data. So just like we have data in our day-to-day interactions and experiences as humans, we also have data from day-to-day interactions on social media platforms. So as a researcher, you can use social media to conceive research idea while you're on the social media, surfing through different social media platforms like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and the rest of all that. You watch videos, read news, read comments, you do a lot of things. While you're doing these things, you can think of what you can research on. You could decide to research on something that captivates you, or something that you feel people need to know more about. So anyway, don't want to digress. Then I also say that you can also use the social media to get your data. So if you can use the social media to conceive a research idea, of course, you can get the data for that research idea from social media. Now, even if you do not conceive the idea from social media, you can also use the social media to get your data. As a new media analyst that I am, or new media researcher, I get most of the articles I've written, I got data from the internet, because over time I've enjoyed working with human subjects and what they see and do on the internet. So you can collect your data from social media platforms. You can collect text, you can collect images, you can collect videos. For those, if you're familiar with comedy skits, which happens to be the in thing right now, those kits can actually make up your data for any kind of, from any perspective, or on anything that you want to investigate, okay? Even pictures, if you're interested in pictures, like for me, I've worked on memes, for instance. Memes are a combination of pictures and text and they pass across particular messages. So I've looked at memes and how they are used to debunk social realities in Nigeria. So aside the collection of data, so like I said, you can collect your data, you can download these videos, download the text, and I think in our classes, the practical aspects, we looked at the manual and the use of AI to download videos and text from social media platforms. And last of them all is use of social media for dissemination of research findings. So my argument is, if you can conceive your research idea from the internet, you can gather data from there. You can also tell people about what you are doing on social media platform. But the should I say the major disadvantage or the snag to the use of social media platforms to disseminate your research findings especially at the early age stage when the research idea is still budding, is that somebody just might steal your research. But I also argue that nobody can actually steal your research. Even if 10 people work on the same thing, they will approach it from different perspectives. So what you call stealing in the long run might help you diversify your ideas, okay? And of course, when you've published your research in journals, books, and other platforms, you can share your publication on social media platforms. With the population of people that use the internet, sharing your publication on social media platforms will give you visibility. And of course, as academics, we all know what visibility can do for us and our identity as researchers. I think that is more like, that is all I have to say since it's a summary. I hope I've done justice to the question.
Yeah, you've done more than justice. If there's any word called over justice, you've done it. Thank you very much. Yeah, and for the benefit of those who joined us today, last week Cynthia took us through, I said Cynthia, sorry, Ellen took us through using social media for research, and just like she had summarized, we got an introduction into the benefit of using social media and how to actually use social media. And today we'll be having a follow-up of some sorts to that discussion. It is not enough that you have collected your data, you then need to sit with it and make sense out of it, which is the whole idea of analysis. And like most qualitative researchers will tell you that analysis to engage critically with it, to read, listen, immerse yourself in it, and try to pick out the patterns and all of that. So today we're looking at how to do it. Concerned about this because last time we were talking about it, she said she also just started learning around it, but of course we keep learning in our career. And from some of the papers I've read from St. Ellen, I see that she's used CDA a lot, or maybe she's used it well compared to some of us who are just learning about it. So I'll yield the floor to Cynthia.
Is that me or you? I can no longer hear you. Okay, Toby, you're muted suddenly.
Dr. Nin, sorry, did you get the last thing I said? I noticed
No,
I
we
was
lost
disconnected.
you.
Oh, so
We
sorry.
lost you.
So, yes, I was just saying thank you for doing justice to the last week's topic, and also to sort of give a preamble to what we are going to be talking about today, which is how to do critical discourse analysis. And I was also alluding to the fact that it is not sufficient to just collect data using social media. You then need to sit down with it, engage with it, and critically unpack some of the underlying themes and patterns in the data you've collected. And that's what we are here to learn today. So, Dr. Ellen will take us through what critical discourse analysis actually means, how to do it, and what are the usual tips and, should I say, pros and cons that one needs to look out for. So, without wasting any more time, I yield the floor to Dr. Ellen Ugah. Thank you, Ellen. I will transfer host rights to you now so you can share your
Okay.
screen. You should be able to share your screen now, Ellen.
Yes, I can. I'm trying to
Okay.
work on it.
All right.
Okay, so I hope you can all see my screen now.
Yes, I can from my end.
Okay, I want to believe everyone else can as well. Well, CDA is critical discourse analysis. Now, just like you said earlier, beyond gathering your data, what do you do with the data? Now, like I said, most of what we have on the internet is text, but beyond this text, there's stuff. So beyond the text, there are images, there are videos, there are other forms of, there are pictures and the rest of all that. And sometimes the pictures are combined with texts. And of course, the videos are what they are because beyond depicting images, there's also a form of talking. Participants or people in the videos do talk. So how can we account for what people say? Okay, how can we analyze the language using the text on social media platform or other platforms as well? The text, the videos that have people saying one or two things. How can we analyze these things, these text and talk in relation to societal problems? That is basically what critical discourse is all about. But before you go into this critical discourse, let's talk about discourse generally. The discourse of anything has to do with verbal or written expressions about that thing. So discourse generally is a verbal unit or written unit of expression. It's an actual instance of communication in the medium of language, that is using the medium of language. Discourse is an instance of communication that uses the medium of language. So it extends beyond a sentence. The discourse of anything is actually a large stretch of utterance. It contains series of communication or series of contexts of communication about that particular thing. That is why I said it's a continuous stretch of spoken or written language on anything. For instance, now if we look at the discourse of, let's look at the Japa syndrome, for instance. There are various discourses about the Japa syndrome. So it's not just a sentence, it's not just something that you get from the text, it's a continual communication or interaction about that particular thing. So that is what discourse is all about. So discourses, of course, is a human phenomenon. Discourse is a human phenomenon or human attribute such that it is situated within society. For instance, now we can say that the discourse of feminism in Nigeria, for instance, differs, okay, from the discourse of feminism in America. Feminist studies in America has grown larger than what we have in Nigeria today. We can also say the same about the discourse of sexuality. There are things being talked about sexuality in developed countries that we cannot, or we are not ready to have such conversation here in Nigeria. So discourses are situated within human societies and they are socially shaped by societal practices within this society. And also like to reiterate that discourses are spoken. They can be spoken, they can be written, okay? They also come in form of visual representation because I think because of this meeting, I'll be talking about images, videos, and pictures. So you know they say what they say about pictures, that a picture contains 1,000 words. So pictures are actually text. They also represent discourses in general. So discourses are spoken or can be spoken, written, or visual representation on any topic that you can think about. So that brings us to critical discourse analysis. CDA, which is CDA is an approach to the study of language or linguistic text beyond discourse. Now, what I mean by beyond discourse is the fact that when you think about discourse, you think about just the conversation here and now, okay, or other conversations that are related. CDA goes beyond the conversation to talk about, look at the society.
Helen, please wait a minute. Yes, let me do that. But you're host now, so I can do that from my end. Can you? Yeah,
I have to.
Yeah, Dr. Itoro, could you kindly mute yourself, please? Thank you. Helen, you're the host now, so you can do that from your end.
I think doing that for my end means I may have to stop sharing, right?
No, you don't have to. Just click on the participant list and I like the person's name. I think that's Dr. Ito, but he's mute now, so you can continue.
Okay, he's muted. Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's muted.
So, okay, I was saying that CDA considers the context of communication and general societal practices too, because most times every context of communication builds on the etiquette of communication within that context, as well as societal practices within that context. Let's take, for instance, student-lecturer conversation in Nigeria. For instance, there's a way
less format.
So who do you know is talking now? Inemeka, right? Okay.
Yeah, Inemeka. Sorry about this. I think we need to activate a setting that mutes everybody upon entry. Sorry for the distractions.
No problem. How would I do? So I was saying that CDA takes into cognizance societal practices. So the Nigerian society, for instance, gives so much respect or deference to older people, elderly people, such that such societal practices have been transferred to even formal settings. Okay, so here in Nigeria, you're supposed to talk to your lecturers as if they are your parents. You accord them the same respect you accord your parents, such that, of course, you can even call them daddy and mommy. Okay, in some cases, of course, and then formally, of course, I expect to call them Professor this or Dr. that or Mr. this or Mrs. that. Okay, but in the US, from what I've gathered so far, sometimes some professors allow you to call them by their first name. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that context of communication are shaped by societal practices. Should I say societal practices come into play in various contexts of communication? So when you are doing your CDA, you look beyond the discourse, consider the societal practices, societal ideologies, okay, in order to be able to do a thorough analysis of what you are looking at. That is why I said CDA considers language as a social practice. Okay, social practices affect the use of language in every context of every human communication. And CDA also considers the way in which power relations and ideology are embedded in this. There's no way we talk that we don't show inclination towards what we are talking about. Okay, beyond that, our general beliefs, okay, or the general rules that guide our attitude towards life also reflects in what we say. So that is like a layman's definition of ideology. Okay, so our ideologies are embedded in what we say, in both in obvious and not so obvious ways. Sometimes we come out categorically to say what we believe in, and sometimes it is not so clear. But the kind of arguments we give and the words or the linguistic expression we use to give this argument portray ideological beliefs and practices. Okay, but so through CDA as a researcher, through the use of CDA, you can investigate, challenge, and intervene in power relations. So beyond looking at ideological belief and practices, you can also look at power relations or social problems as portrayed through the use of language or linguistic elements. So I would also like to say here that CDA is not a theory. This is only an interdisciplinary approach to the study of linguistic and non-linguistic text. So CDA is not a theory. There are different theories of CDA, but CDA as a whole is not a theory. It is only an approach. So I would say that the major tenets of CDA is that CDA investigates oppression, dominance, unequal power relation, ideology, and the rest of all that embedded in human conversation about different discourses. As a result of that, we say that CDA is interdisciplinary in the sense that it adopts interdisciplinary approach in the investigation of text. What I mean is that, for instance, I'm in the Department of English, but I've worked on political discourse, I've worked on societal practices, I've worked on women's reproductive health, and the rest of all that. No, so just like Toby said earlier on that I've done CDA. So I've done CDA, I've done FCDA. FCD is feminist critical discourse. But the difference between CDA and FCDA is that FCD is gender-based, while CDA can cut across anything. So CDA generally adopts an interdisciplinary approach to the investigation of text, in the sense that it incorporates the social, the cultural, the historical, the political, okay, the medical, as well as ethnographic and historical approaches. So it is all encompassing. So you cannot say, I'm not in English, I don't have to use CDA. If CDA is relevant to what you are doing, I assure you that you find it a very interesting approach to the analysis of any given text. So as a form of recap, I'll say that CDA is interdisciplinary. It incorporates several disciplines, from the medical to the legal to the rest of the world. The reason why the interdisciplinarity of CDA is important to talk about or mention is the fact that, you know, I talked about discourse earlier on. So the discourse, for you to be able to analyze what you're working on, you must be familiar with conversations around that discourse. And of course, conversation builds on other conversation. When people talk, they make reference to what they have said, what somebody has said. Okay, they make reference to what obtains in other societies or other places. So when you're doing a CD of anything, you may have to link up all these things together. But at the end of the day, it makes your analysis robust and makes it easy, or makes it easy for anybody that picks up what you have written to have divergent views and opinion about what you're talking about. So you could be, for instance, like sociology, and in your CD analysis of what you're analyzing, to talk about psychological and medical effect of something. So let me give an instance now. I'm working on abortion. Now, beyond abortion being a topic that is situated in reproductive health, I am in English, so I'm using narrative on abortion. But you see, in my analysis of women's narrative of abortion, the political has come into play, the legal has come into play. To a large extent, we can say that abortion is politicized in Nigeria and many countries of the world. The psychological come into play. You cannot talk about women's abortion experience without talking about the psychological effects of abortion in them. But at the end of the day, what I'm looking at is the language, the text, what the words that they use to talk about their abortion experiences. And if you investigate these texts, you see certain recurring things. I've looked at women, the identity women build for themselves when you talk about their abortion experiences. And I've been able to argue that this identity most times is dependent or contingent upon societal practices and beliefs, as well as the legal sanction or dimension about abortion in Nigeria. So CDA is also interdiscursive, like I said. Discourses are not isolated. Now, I'm talking about CDA. I moved on to abortion. I moved on to political discourse. And then I mentioned something about what Toby has said. So in a way, everything is intertwined in the use of in language generally. So no discourse is isolated. Nothing is isolated when you're doing a CDA analysis of it. So everything is intertwined such that you will have to beyond being interdisciplinary, there's also the concept of interdiscursivity in CDA. And then the last one is intertextual. It is the relationship that, of course, exists between texts. Let's take, for instance, the political discourse in Nigeria. If you remember during the recently concluded election, during the electionary campaign process, actually at the heat of the campaign from January to March, shortly before the election, people made reference to what was happening then being a recurrence of what happened during the 2019 election. Okay, so that is what we call intertextuality. So they are using, so what has happened before is influencing or has influenced people's perception of the various political candidates that were contesting during the election. So with intertextuality, you look at how texts influence other texts and how people implicitly or explicitly refer to other texts. Now, like I said earlier, CBA is an approach, okay? So several researchers have come up with, a thing about the academia is that people do not always agree on what is. So several researchers, or should I say, proponents, or no, I don't want to call them proponents. Let me just say several research CDA researchers have come up with different perceptions or dimensions on how to look at, on how to do, or what to investigate when doing a CDA analysis of anything. So we have researchers like Van Dyke, Woodard, Foucault, Paul G, Fairclough, and the rest of all that. They have proposed different approaches and methodological process in the use of CDA. But before then, okay, let me not go to methodology first. So for Fairclough, for instance, he looks at, he considers the best and appropriate CDA analysis, CDA as one that is three-dimensional in the sense that it looks at the micro, the meso, and the macro analysis. So the micro refers to the discursive events. For instance, what we are doing right now is a discursive event. So the micro looks at the discursive events, while the meso, okay, the meso is the discursive practices within that comes into play during a particular discursive event. So earlier on, I talked about lecturer-student relationship. What are the discursive practices expected in lecturer-student relationship? How are lecturers expected to address their students, and how are students expected to address their lecturers? Okay, and then that is also embedded within the macro structure, which is in Nigerian society. So beyond university rules, beyond particular context of communication, maybe for instance, students demanding to know why he or she failed a particular lecturer's course within a particular university, we also look at societal practices that come into play. So for Fairclough, for instance, when you are doing your CV analysis, you have to go beyond the micro to encompass or take cognizance of the meso and the macro structure. But for Foucault, for instance, Foucault believes that discourse is all about parts also. From every discursive event, from every discourse events, power structures are evidence in the sense that there's always someone gaining something while someone is losing. Someone is always much more powerful than the other. So if you are adopting the Foucauldian analysis or approach to CDA, you look at power structures in conversation. And generally in English language, most researchers have used CDA to analyze political text. And I would say that political text is the perfect platform to test any CDA approach that you want to think about, because in politics, we see a lot of things that come into play. There's power, there's ideology, there's victimization, and the rest of all that. So there's unequal power relation as well. So politics or political discourse have been proven to be an all-encompassing platform for the analysis or for the investigation of critical discourse analysis. Then the last one I want to look at, there are others, okay, but these are the three major ones that people have worked on over time. And the most popular of them all is that of Van Dyke. So most times when people talk about CDA, the first person that comes to everyone's mind is Van Dyke. So for Van Dyke, CDA studies the way social power, abuse, and inequality are enacted, reproduced, legitimized, and resisted by text and talk. Now, beyond the political, we can look at gender discourse in Nigeria. And whenever anything about, when gender for me within this context of conversation is about the male, about females generally, I'm not looking at masculinities, I'm looking at femininities. Okay, now when we say gender to an average Nigerian has something to do with women. Okay, so if you look at most conversation or most gendered conversations in Nigeria, you look at social power abuse, you look at inequality where women are expected to act a particular way, talk a particular way, look a particular way. So for Van Dyke, a typical discourse analysis studies the way social power abuse, inequality are enacted, that is perpetrated, reproduced, legitimated, and resisted by text and talk. So when you see women arguing for women on online platforms, what they are doing is they are resisting the discourse or gender dominance. I'm much more familiar with Van Dijk's critical discourse analysis, but that is what I've been using for a very long time, and I find his own approach or his own approach to CDA much more relatable. All right. So generally, if you are looking at if you're doing a CDA analysis of anything, what you look at is the particular way or the specific ways discourse structures are deployed in the reproduction of social dominance. So let's look at okay, I think some weeks back there was this we don't know whether it's fake news or real, but members of the House of Rep Assembly, their salary scale has been increased by 104%. And then I've forgotten who made, there was a rejoinder, a recounter to that, and nothing of such was happening. Now, if you look at the language in which the news on both ends was written, there's a form of power play there. So a typical discourse analysis, a critical discourse analysis generally, look at power, look at dominance, look at hegemony. Hegemony is related to power and dominance. Look at ideology, look at class, okay, gender, race, discrimination. So there are a lot of things to look at in CDA analysis of anything, right? So beyond the political, you can apply CDA in conversations around racism, classism, and the rest of all that. For instance, if you look at pictures about African children in most online platforms, what you see are people that are hungry, malnourished, dirty looking, poorly clothed, and the rest of all that. That suggests that Africa is poor generally. But the truth is, we all know that that is not an actual or the real depiction of African children, right? I have nieces and nephews. I know my nieces and nephews don't look like that. So that is actually a form of, should I say, or discrimination and race as well coming into play. So your typical discourse analysis can look at all these things. But at the end of the day, one thing that comes into play in every critical discourse analysis is ideology. Ideology and power. Ideology and power. So just to take us through the notion of ideology and power. So we can say that now when you're looking at ideology and power in your analysis of, or your critical analysis of any discourse, there's this belief for us CDA analysts that discourse generally is used by dominant group to oppress the less privileged group. Now, if we look at what the president is saying about this current wave of hardship that is happening in Nigeria, President is saying Nigerians should bear with the Nigerian government. Nigerians should learn to adjust to the situation because things will get better in time. An online conversation about the president's stance is that you cannot expect the masses to make sacrifices when those in power are not making sacrifices. So we'll see that with the president's choice of words is oppressing Nigerians in a not so obvious way by telling Nigerians to bear with him and the rest of all that. It's a form of oppression because a lot of Nigerians are less privileged and they are suffering from the policies or the new policies being formulated by the present administration. So discourse is used by dominant groups to oppress the less privileged. And at the same time, so members of the oppressed group use discourse to resist domination. Now, if you can remember what happened during the NSAS, now, with NSAS basically was a form of resistance. It was a form of activism. So if you follow all the conversations, the placards, the texts, the tweets, and the rest of all that, all of these were used to resist the domination of the Nigerian government as well as the Nigerian police. So discourse is used to oppress and it's also used to resist oppression. So CDA investigates these things in text such that it analyzes or investigates or examines any traits of inequality, unfairness, injustice, another forms of social imbalances. So as a CDA analyst or as a CDA scholar, you're assumed to be the fighter, okay? Or you're assumed to be someone that's looking out for the oppressed and the less privileged in society. You are using your work as a form of social action to call out inequalities or dominance in society through your research. So, in CDA, we look at so like I said earlier on, CDA is a form of social action that interprets ideology and perspective of power and inequality, underlying the production of discourse in various contexts. So I've written something on ethnicity in Nigeria. Ordinarily in Nigeria, some ethnic groups are perceived to be much more intelligent than, I'm not going to mention ethnic group in Nigeria, much more intelligent than others. Then some other ethnic group are perceived to be richer or more industrious than the others. Then there's this other ethnic group that people believe that all they do is make babies and multiply. They don't have anything to offer. So if you look at online conversation on anything political, there's a way ethnicity comes into play, and these ethnic beliefs and practices come into play. So this kind of data, for instance, prefer an interesting approach or an interesting way of investigating the discourse of oppression, power imbalance, and ideology within the Nigerian context. So I'll say that a typical CDA analysis brings out elements of bias, prejudice, manipulative use of language, distortion of facts, and the rest of all that. So if you know that for politicians, for instance, an average politician, when addressing the general public, usually distorts a lot of facts. So as a CDA analyst, okay, you can look at how facts are distorted. In fact, even news reports too is not free from oppression, dominance, and the rest of all that. If you look at the way news is cast on different electronic channels in Nigeria, you see that each television, each TV station have their own agenda. And their agenda is always evident in the way they cast their news or the perspective of with which they portray the news. So as a CDA analysis, you can look at all this. And data in CDA, earlier on I said that CDA is interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. So we don't look at fictional works. CDA generally look at non-fictional works. That's why online platforms provide the best data source for any CDA analysis. The conversations there are naturally occurring. No, it is not fiction. Nobody came up with those conversations. So it's a naturally occurring conversation. It's a you talk, I talk thing. So that is a perfect data source for your CDA analysis. So like I said earlier on, your data in CDA encompasses both text and object. So you can look at colors. Colors are significant for meaning. Color black, color red, color white, any kind of color is also significant for meaning. Objects, images, and the rest of all that are significant for meaning. Typical CDA analysis. Earlier on, I talked about news reports. So you can use for my PhD thesis, for instance, I worked on the APC's change agenda. That was the part of the manifesto, or that was the slogan for APC during the 2019 electioneering campaign. So I looked at news reports about the APC change agenda. I looked at news reports. I looked at opinion articles and well as online reports. With those, I was able to compare the general conversation and attitude about this agenda pre the 2019 and the 2015, pre the 2015 election and post the election. So news reports, public and political speeches, media reports, political handbills and posters all provide data source for your CDA analysis. But for me, I would say that the most interesting of them all are online comments. So because I love working with human subjects, the online comment section of most news reports is always very interesting. On that platform, you get divergent views and opinion about what is being discussed. And of course, if you follow comments on anything in Nigeria, you get rich opinion about it, and your knowledge about that thing is improves over time with the more comments that you read. Here I have a conversation or a text that I pulled from the Conversation Africa about women in politics. I'm just interested in this particular text that I've highlighted here. Okay, it says women are better represented in policies than ever, with flourishing online feminism as blah blah blah. Now, if you look at this text, will show that the person, whoever wrote this is, should I say, is pro-women. Okay, is probably a gender activist fighting for women's rights. This is just a little part of the news report or the article I got from the conversation. So where I'm just driving at is that your CDA analysis can look at, when you are doing your CDA analysis, for instance, you can do it thematically. You can bring out recurring themes, okay, in your data. These recurring themes can actually guide how you do your analysis. So if, for instance, now you're looking at maybe trying to remember something that happened recently yes, for instance, if you look at this May Summer girl and the general discourse about the forgery of our results and everything, if you look at the comments, you see notions of ideology, okay, coming into play. Initially there was this ideology of let her be, because she's a small girl, you want to intimidate her. That was power play coming into it. And in fact, if you're going to use that, for instance, as your data for any research, there are lots of interesting findings that you can get when you apply your CDA analysis to that. There's a lot of things to uncover in CDA analysis, and this is just a very small part of your CDA, of what you can do with CDA. But I'll just say that if anyone is interested in CDA, okay, or in utilizing CDA approach to the analysis of their data, you may want to read up on Van Dyke. Van Dyke CDA is very straightforward, and I think a lot of researchers use Van Dyke CDA compared to that of others. So in conclusion, I would just say that CDA considers power language as a form of social practice, okay? And it considers the way in which power, relation, and ideology are embedded in what people say, whether obviously or otherwise. So thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I've not left you confused. So I think we've just to be here.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you. I guess others can hear you.
Oh, okay, good evening. Thank you very much for the exposure to CDA. It's been a very enlightening session. So very quickly would be taking questions now and comments. Yes, so if we have questions or comments, could just raise our hands so our facilitator can answer our questions and react to comments.
There's a question here. Okay, I think that's from Sintra. It's Teun Van Dyke. Teun Van Dyke, CEUNVANDIJK. So I hope I've answered your question. Yes, thank you, Teun Van Dyke. Yes, thank you. So if there is no other question, I don't know. I don't think anyone else has a question.
Okay, it seems we do not have any other questions. So I want to appreciate everyone. Okay, is there a question?
No, wait, 2 hands are raised.
Okay.
Maybe they want to say something. Okay, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Let's start with Cynthia Olufade.
Thank you for that insightful presentation, Doctor. I'm in transit, so it might be a little noisy. I wanted to ask basically about I'm in the Department of Anthropology. I'm doing my PhD. I was going to ask about how critical discourse analysis intersects with ethnography. I know that you talked about online or ethnography, I don't know what they call that, but online participation and all that. But I'm really interested in how I can engage, because I'm doing ethnography, how I can engage CDA into my research, basically.
All right. Can I say that no, in your ethnography, I want to believe that beyond observing societal practices or whatever you're working on, you work with text.
Oh, yeah, the theoretical part, of course, yeah. It's good that you were mentioning a lot of Foucault. I'm actually using some of Foucault's power theories, also feminist anthropologists like that followed his theories like that. So it's, of course, there are texts that discuss, that have lots of discourse. I'm working on sexual violence and sex trafficking that discuss the matter. And then I'm now actually in the field and collecting data to analyze these theories that I've gotten from texts. Hello? Can you hear me? Oh. Oh, Jesus.
We're sorry about the break. Our facilitator's network just tripped off, but she's trying to come back on. So please, let's wait patiently for her. We are very sorry.
Ube.
We just wait. Maybe we just to the whole literature
Hello.
on the Ellen, can you hear me at all? Okay, pretty much
Yes, we can hear you.
something that quite difficult to understand. Okay, thank you. So I was just saying that I was planning to bonus question about whether we call it a day. I would rather that we just wait some minutes for us to just question inside about today, and they will respond that to another time. But if we can stay here from in the next 3.
Okay, so the thing is, she has been trying to log in, but she has been getting an error message. So I think we might have to call it a day. She has tried multiple times, but can you hear me? So I think we can just call it a day. We are very sorry. We apologize for this delay and inconvenience. So thank you very much for coming, everyone. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was a very nice session. I learned something new.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We will also try to maybe do this session some other time. Then we can take questions and reactions and comments.
That's fine. That's fine.
All right. Thank you once again.
Welcome.
I've enjoyed the rest of your day.
And you too.
Okay.